Hello health champions! Today we're going to talk about apple cider vinegar gummies. I'm sure you have heard by now about apple cider vinegar and all the claims. So here's one study, for example, that talked about how apple cider vinegar can help with weight loss. They took 39 people and they assigned them to two different groups. One was an apple cider vinegar group and one was a control group. In both cases, they had a 250 calorie restriction. And after 12 weeks, they found that the people who received the apple cider vinegar had significantly lost more weight, they had less BMI, they had less hip circumference, and they had less visceral fat and a decreased appetite. And the visceral fat, that is the fat surrounding your organs that indicate that you have some metabolic health problems. But they also checked their blood and they found that the triglycerides and their total cholesterol had significantly decreased, while on the other hand, the HDL had increased, which is a good thing, indicating less inflammation. So it seems a simple enough thing to take a little bit of apple cider vinegar and get all these benefits, right? But the problem is a lot of people just can't stand the taste. No matter how good it is, they just can't make themselves consume it. So some smart people came up with another way of delivering the apple cider vinegar. So they make gummies, basically candy. And everybody loves candy and gummy bears. So the question now, though, is can we get some of the same benefits from the gummies, or is it mostly hype? Well, the first thing we need to look at is the dose. So in this study, we want to highlight the fact that they used 30 milliliters. That's 2 tablespoons worth of apple cider vinegar. So when it comes to apple cider vinegar, the active component is called acetic acid. So if we have a certain amount of apple cider vinegar and a certain concentration, then we have so much of the acetic acid in that product. So in this study, they used 30 grams, 2 tablespoons, and apple cider vinegar and most other vinegar is standardized at 5% acetic acid. We multiply that out and we get 1,500 milligrams of acetic acid. So there are some studies that use apple cider vinegar, but then there are other studies that simply use white vinegar. They use the acetic acid as the measurement. So some other studies have used plain white vinegar and basically get the same results. So they conclude that, yeah, there may be some additional benefits from apple cider vinegar, but it's basically the acetic acid that does the job. And in another study, they used 1,000 milligrams of acetic acid as the reference. Now, how does this compare to the gummies? Well, here's a typical brand. We'll just call it brand X, where one gummy bear will give you 500 milligrams of apple cider vinegar. So now what a lot of people do is they say, well, it has 500 milligrams. That doesn't sound so bad. And they compare that 500 to this 1,000 because they read that study. They saw 1,000 milligrams of acetic acid. But here's what they forget. They don't read the fine print, or they don't understand it, where it says 5% acetic acid. So we have to multiply out this 500 milligram times 5%. So we have 25 milligrams. So as it turns out, it's 1/40th of that 1,000, or compared to the study we just looked at, it is 1/60th. So 60 times more acetic acid in the study we just watched. So basically, most of these bottles contain 60 gummies. So you have to eat the entire bottle every day to get the same amount as 2 tablespoons of apple cider vinegar. But despite that, people really seem to like these gummies. So I thought maybe there's something else to it. So I looked a little further and I found that some of these are fortified. They've added some other things that might be beneficial. So here's one example now where they've added some ginger root extract, and they had 60 micrograms. Now, most people probably don't know how much a microgram is. So let me try to put that in perspective for you. That if you like ginger and you really want some of those benefits, then you could put a teaspoon of ginger into a smoothie. There's some recipes for that. So let's say 1 teaspoon equals 5 grams. So that's about the size of your fingertip, basically. That's a little piece of ginger. Now, 60 micrograms equals 0.00006 grams. So if you divide this out, now you find that it takes you, if you ate a gummy bear, a serving of gummy bears every day, it would only take you 83,333 days to equal that much ginger. And if you break that into years, you find that in a mere 228 years, you've gotten basically 1 serving of ginger. So I'm not sure that ginger is going to do you all that much good at that quantity. Now, I have to be honest, this was probably the worst example out there. Some other people who add ginger, they add a little bit more. So another brand was actually using 2 milligrams, and a microgram is a millionth, a milligram is a thousandth. So if you did this brand, now you can get that 1 serving of ginger in only 7 years. So out of all the brands I looked at, and there were dozens, I could not find any that had any significant amount of apple cider vinegar or any other nutrient to really make a difference. Some of them sprinkled a little beetroot powder or some synthetic B vitamins or something else, but nothing that would really make a difference. So what are you getting a lot of? Well, unfortunately, the main thing you're going to get a lot of is sugar. So here's one brand where you get 4 grams of added sugar per serving. And again, 1 serving is typically 2 little gummies. And how do you get that? Well, glucose syrup, cane sugar, they have all these different names, but they're basically just sugar. But they also try to play tricks on you. So here's another brand that says it includes 1 gram of added sugar, but then when you go look at the total carbohydrates, there's 4 grams. And you confirm this by looking at the calories, because 15 calories is usually about 4 grams of carbohydrate if you round it a little bit. So where does this come from if there's only 1 gram of sugar? And the first ingredient, if you notice, is indeed cane sugar. But the second one is the key here, because sugar has over 100 different names when they try to hide it on the label. And tapioca is a starch that you use for baking when you're gluten intolerant or something like that. But they can also use this tapioca and turn it into tapioca syrup. And that is basically what they've done here, because there's no other purpose for tapioca in a gummy than to sweeten it. So they use tapioca syrup, but they call it organic tapioca. And then they don't include it in these 4 grams of carbohydrate, even though it's basically just another sugar. But then I got a little more hopeful when I saw that there were some gummies that were called keto. Surely these people must know what they're doing. However, we find here that the total carbohydrates are 6 grams per serving. And again, included added sugar is 4 grams, and it's probably closer to 6, even though they've just called them some different things. And here we find that there's 3 types of sugar. There's glucose syrup, there's sugar, and there's glucose. They're all saying the same thing. It's just sugar. Next, I did a search for sugar-free gummies, and several dozen more brands came up. this being one of them. And when you read the fine print, it says that it has 30 calories per serving and 8 grams of total carbohydrate. But if it's sugar-free, then how does that add up? Where does it come from? Well, it's another product called maltitol syrup. So technically they're right. It's not a sugar, it's a sugar alcohol, but it is just as addictive as sugar, or pretty close to it. And it's very popular because in candy, it tastes the closest to sugar. They can make really, really good chocolate and candy. But the reason it tastes so good and the reason it's so addictive is that it's 55% basically the same as sugar in terms of the calories and in terms of the blood sugar raising effect, the glycemic effect. It's 55% similar. So they just use a little bit more, and that's where you get the 8 grams instead of the 4 that we saw in the previous example. So another case where they just try to deceive you and lie on the label, but in the end, you're just getting blood sugar spikes just the same as sugar. And this is quite disturbing for a product that's supposed to help regulate blood sugar. That's the whole idea of apple cider vinegar. So some brands, they just stuff them full of sugar, and others, they stuff them full of something else that has roughly the same effect. But here's the most astounding piece of all of this. It's the rating. So I'm thinking, with all of this stuff going on, I haven't found any single reason that this would help the body or benefit you in any way. And then you go look at the ratings for these products, and you find that it has 4.5 stars, give or take, and over 350,000 ratings. How can that be? And I can't come up with any explanation except that people must really like gummies. And to the extent that these people actually see results, it probably comes down to something called placebo. And that simply means that you take something that you believe will have an effect, but it really does nothing, or it doesn't have the effect you believe. But because you believe it will do that, your body makes the change. And your mind is incredibly powerful. So they put all these useless or minuscule amounts in with a bunch of sugar, and people really want to believe that this helps because they really like gummies, so they report benefits. Fortunately, there are alternatives. So if you can tolerate the flavor of apple cider vinegar, you can dilute it with water, you can sweeten it with stevia, you can put some bubbly water, you can drink it, mix it with lemon, all these different things. You can put it in food. If you really, really can't stand the taste, then what do? Well, apple cider vinegar may have some benefits over regular white vinegar, but realize that most of the studies have been done on white vinegar. So probably almost all of the benefit is from the acetic acid. And there's many other ways of getting that. So one, for example, is if you eat salads, every time you put oil and vinegar on your salad, you're actually getting some of that acetic acid. So let's check some numbers just for comparison. And remember that the brand X of the gummies had about 25 milligrams of acetic acid, the active component, whereas 1 teaspoon of vinegar, red wine vinegar, white wine, white vinegar, apple cider vinegar, any kind you like, has about 250 milligrams, about 10 times that much. And when I make a salad, I use a whole lot more than 1 teaspoon, and that's not even trying to up the dose or anything. That's just for flavor. Another thing that has vinegar in it is mustard. So if you have 1 teaspoon of mustard, now you're getting about 80 milligrams of acetic acid again. Sauerkraut also has acetic acid, and it's not even that they add it, it just develops naturally during fermentation. So if we have some sauerkraut, we eat about 100 grams, like 3.5 ounces. Again, we have about 250 milligrams, equal to 10 servings of gummy bears. And if you don't like any of those things, well, maybe you like pickles. Most people just love pickles. Now, how much is in there? Well, I couldn't find an exact number, but just to give you an idea that when they make the pickle juice, when they pickle these, they use about half vinegar and half water. And vinegar is about 5%, so the solution that they use is about 2%, 2.5% acetic acid. And out of that jar, if you have a whole jar of pickles and pickle juice, 40% of that is liquid, so we multiply these and we find out that about 1% of that entire jar is acetic acid. So now if you have one pickle and it's about 100 grams or 3.5 ounces, now that would again give you about 1,000 milligrams of acetic acid. Now, I tried to find out how much of that acetic acid would actually penetrate and get into the pickle. I could not find an answer, but let's just assume that maybe not all of it gets in there, maybe just 25%. Well, you're still talking 250 milligrams. So you can have a pickle or you can have 10 servings of gummy bears and get 40 grams of sugar along for the ride. I think I know which one I pick. If you enjoyed this video, you're going to love that one. And if you truly want to master health by understanding how the body really works, make sure you subscribe, hit that bell, and turn on all the notifications so you never miss a life-saving video.